In the early 20th century, few could have imagined the rise of America to the global superpower it is today. Yet, over the course of a century, the United States of America went from being a relatively isolated nation to the dominant force in international politics, economics, and military power. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was the result of a series of pivotal events, economic policies, and international conflicts. Today, we explore how America became a world superpower. The story of America's rise begins well before the 20th century. After gaining independence from Britain in 1776, the fledgling nation expanded westward across North America, driven by the concept of manifest destiny, the belief that it was America's divine right to expand its territory from coast to coast. This territorial expansion played a crucial role in the nation's future economic and political dominance. The acquisition of vast tracts of land through deals like the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 and the annexation of Texas in 1845 provided America with resources that would fuel industrial growth in the 19th century. However, the United States maintained a policy of isolationism, especially when it came to European conflicts. The Founding Fathers, particularly George Washington, had advised the nation to steer clear of foreign entanglements. For much of the 19th century, America focused on internal growth, settling its lands, establishing trade, and developing its industrial base. While Europe was embroiled in conflicts and imperial ambitions, America remained on the sidelines. The late 19th century saw the United States undergo rapid industrialization. The Second Industrial Revolution, which began around 1870, transformed the American economy. Innovations in steel production, railroads, and manufacturing not only created massive industries, but also laid the groundwork for America's economic dominance. The rise of influential industrialists like Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and Henry Ford spurred the growth of American corporations, which would later become global entities. The United States became the world's leading producer of steel, oil, and other critical materials. It also developed a consumer culture that drove demand for goods at home and abroad. This economic boom created jobs, encouraged immigration, and fueled urbanization as millions of Americans moved to cities for work. By the end of the 19th century, the United States was already an economic powerhouse, but its rise to global prominence was still on the horizon. The turning point for America's role on the world stage came with the Spanish-American War in 1898. This brief conflict marked the beginning of American imperialism and a shift toward more aggressive foreign policy. The war resulted in the United States acquiring territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. It also positioned the United States as a colonial power, with interests in both the Caribbean and the Pacific. The Spanish-American War demonstrated America's growing military might and its willingness to engage in international conflicts. It also signaled a departure from strict isolationism as America began to assert itself as a player in global affairs. Despite its growing economic and military power, the United States was reluctant to involve itself in European conflicts. However, when World War I broke out in 1914, the global landscape began to shift. Initially, the United States remained neutral, but by 1917, the situation had changed. Several factors, including German submarine warfare and the infamous Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany attempted to form an alliance with Mexico against the US, pushed America to join the war. America's entry into World War I in 1917 tipped the scales in favor of the Allies. The sheer size of the American military, bolstered by its industrial capacity, helped bring the war to an end. In the aftermath, President Woodrow Wilson proposed the creation of the League of Nations, hoping to establish a framework for international peace. However, the US Senate refused to join the League, reflecting America's lingering isolationist tendencies. Nevertheless, the war had established the US as a formidable military and economic power. The 1920s, often called the Roaring Twenties, saw a period of significant economic growth in America. Advances in technology, mass production, and consumer goods fueled a vibrant economy. However, this period of prosperity was short-lived. The stock market crash of 1929 triggered the Great Depression, a global economic crisis that had devastating effects on the American economy. The Great Depression posed a serious challenge to America's position in the world. Unemployment soared, and the country became more inward-looking. However, the New Deal policies implemented by President Franklin D. Roosevelt aimed to revive the economy through government intervention and public works programs. While these policies helped alleviate some of the worst effects of the Depression, it was World War II that truly revitalized the American economy and solidified the country's global dominance. World War II was the most significant event in America's rise to superpower status. Initially, the United States maintained its neutrality, much like in World War I. However, after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the US was thrust into the war. The United States quickly became the arsenal of democracy, supplying the Allies with weapons, vehicles, and other critical materials. American factories were converted to produce war supplies at an astonishing rate, outproducing the Axis powers by a wide margin. The economic and military mobilization during the war was unparalleled, and by the war's end, the United States had the largest economy in the world. America's military contributions to the war, including the D-Day invasion and the development of the atomic bomb, solidified its status as a global military power. When the war ended in 1945, the United States emerged as one of the two superpowers, alongside the Soviet Union. The aftermath of World War II set the stage for the Cold War, a geopolitical struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. The two superpowers represented competing ideologies, capitalism and democracy versus communism and authoritarianism. The Cold War would dominate global politics for the next 4 decades, with the United States leading the free world and the Soviet Union leading the communist bloc. During the Cold War, the United States invested heavily in its military, including the development of nuclear weapons. The US also formed alliances such as NATO to counter Soviet influence in Europe. The Marshall Plan, which provided economic aid to war-torn European nations, helped rebuild Europe and ensured that these countries remained within the American sphere of influence. The Cold War saw several flashpoints, including the Korean War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Vietnam War. In each of these conflicts, the United States sought to contain the spread of communism while asserting its global dominance. Although the Vietnam War ended in a costly defeat for the US, the overall strategy of containment was largely successful. By the 1980s, under the leadership of President Ronald Reagan, the United States increased pressure on the Soviet Union through military spending and economic sanctions. The Soviet Union, burdened by internal economic problems, was unable to keep pace. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, marking the end of the Cold War and leaving the United States as the world's sole superpower. The end of the Cold War ushered in a new era of American dominance. The 1990s saw the United States at the height of its power. The US economy flourished during the tech boom, and American cultural influence spread around the world through music, movies, and the internet. Globalization, driven by free market policies and technological advancements, further cemented America's position as the leader of the global economy. In the realm of international politics, the United States took on the role of the world's police force, intervening in conflicts such as the Gulf War in 1991 and the Balkan Wars in the late 1990s. The US also played a leading role in shaping international institutions like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and the International Monetary Fund. While the United States remains a superpower today, it faces new challenges. The terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, marked a turning point in American foreign policy. The subsequent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq have been long and costly, both in terms of lives and resources. At the same time, the rise of China as an economic and military power presents a challenge to American dominance. China's rapid industrialization, technological advancements, and growing influence in international organizations have led to what some call a new great power competition. Domestically, the US faces political polarization, economic inequality, and debates over its role in the world. However, America's unparalleled military, economic, and cultural influence ensures that it remains a superpower, even as it navigates the complexities of the 21st century. The United States' rise to superpower status was the result of a combination of factors: territorial expansion, industrialization, military victories, and international leadership. From its humble beginnings as a colony, America has grown into a global leader, shaping the world through its economy, military, and cultural influence. While it faces new challenges, America's position as a world superpower seems secure for the foreseeable future.